I want you all to congratulate yourselves. We were positive. We put on a positive face 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, the Lions were picking first, meaning they were the worst team in the NFL. And here we are a short 2 weeks later on a 2-game winning streak against division rivals. We beat Aaron Rodgers, which was glorious, and followed that up by traveling to Chicago and beating the Bears on the road, which was glorious as well. So I think you all deserve credit for, keeping your nose to the grindstone and putting together a great offensive plan and doing your job and, blocking well and executing your assignment well and doing a good job in coverage and rallying to the ball, pursuing, running, all that stuff, giving great effort. You guys we've been amazing the last 2 weeks. So bravo to us on the 2-week winning streak that the Lions have going. All that is nonsense. I don't know why we're talking about that, but that's where we are. We are going to break down the Lions' Week 11 road matchup against the New York Giants. I probably should have said this sooner. I am Scott Bischoff. I'm coming to you for Detroit Lions podcast. I probably should start this thing over, but I've done it 3 times already, and I'd like to not have to do it again. So stay tuned. It's coming at you right now. First thing we're going to talk about is something very important, and let's be serious for a moment. Chris at Detroit Lions Podcast does this awesome thing for St. Jude, and if you're unaware of what St. Jude does, look it up. It's incredible. The things that children have to go through, it's incredible. So if it's in your heart, please donate if you can. You can donate directly at stjude.org/DLP, Detroit Lions Podcast. If you can't find the link directly there, you can go to Chris's Twitter page. It's at DET Lions Podcast. Or you can go to mine. It's at Bischoff_Scott. And you can find the link at each one of those Twitter pages. And please donate if you can. It's important. It's important work. It's a wonderful thing that Chris does. It is significantly more important than anything else that we're going to talk about. It just is. Yeah. So, okay. So if it's in your heart, donate if you can, please, and thank you. All right, we're on to Week 11. Week 11. Traveling to New York to play the Giants is not a game that I expected when I looked at the schedule months ago. I didn't think this was going to be... it's not like the Lions are a great team or any of that stuff, but I just didn't think that the Giants would be doing what they're doing, which makes this a tough test. It just does. So, just like last week's matchup, I didn't think... I didn't know that either team was in a great position to win. I did not think the Lions would beat the Bears on the road. I did not think the Lions, and if you listen to the preview, you know why. I didn't think they had a plan or the ability to stop Justin Fields running. This feels like another one of those really tight games that's going to go down to the wire, and I think we're going to see a lot of these the rest of the way. So buckle up. Because the game, as crazy as these games always are, they're going to continue to stay that way. The over on this game is 46.5. So Vegas is projecting a bit of a lower scoring game. I could see a scenario. Now, I don't think it's as easy to see as the games in the past have been. That's one of the things that if you're paying attention, betting the over on any game the Lions are in is probably a good idea. and has been a good idea, as long as the opposing pass rush isn't going to destroy Jared Goff. So last week was a game where I thought it could easily go over just because, you could see Fields kind of doing what he did and the Lions having to respond and that kind of stuff. So this doesn't feel as obvious as of an over, but I think you can get there. You can get there in a sneaky way if, let's say, the Lions don't hem in Saquon Barkley and he scores quick. You got to respond. You got to score, right? So I could see that this being a little higher scoring than 46.5. The Giants are favored by 3 at home. The implied totals: Giants at 24.75. The Lions at 21.75. Okay, on to the offense. This is what each team is doing on offense this year. Both teams are averaging 4.8 yards per carry running the ball. That's tied for 9th in the NFL. Both teams have 11 rushing touchdowns total, which is tied for 5th in the NFL. It's obvious these teams can run the ball. Now, we did talk last week, and it's something to remember that this is a season-long stat. The Lions have been nowhere near this good the last month or so. They were not great last week either, running the ball. I would tell you Chicago looks to be a pretty well-coached team. They did some smart stuff to prevent the Lions from getting into a flow running the ball. A lot of that was sort of stemming and sort of collapsing their defensive tackles inside, and I think that it made it hard for the guards to pull and get out in front of the running backs. So it just was tough. That was a tough game. And the Lions did not run the ball well last week. So we haven't, the point is that I'm telling you they're tied for 9th, but if you look at, trends over the past month, they're nowhere near that good. Passing the ball. The Lions are tied for 8th in the NFL, 7.6 yards per attempt. The Giants are 6.7 yards per attempt, which is tied for 19th. The Lions have thrown 15 touchdowns, tied for 9th in the NFL. And the Giants have only thrown 8, which is tied for 28th. So you can see the split there. Although that doesn't necessarily, you would hear that and you would say Daniel Jones is probably not playing great, but he doesn't have weapons. And there is something he's doing that he's playing really well. Yes, the fantasy production or the crazy production isn't there, but he's doing his job. We'll get into that. On defense, the run defense, the Lions are allowing 5.3 yards per carry, which is 30th in the NFL. The Giants are allowing 5.4 yards per carry, which is tied for last in the NFL with the Chargers. Which sounds crazy because their defense is playing really good. Rush defense, touchdowns surrendered. So the amount of touchdowns that they've given up. The Lions have given up 15, which is tied for 30th in the NFL. The Giants have only given up 5, which is 3rd best in the NFL, tied for 3rd best in the NFL. They've only given up 5 touchdowns on the ground. So you can see how the Giants seem to be playing low-scoring, grinded-out games. Passing, the Lions are surrendering 7.8 yards per attempt, which is worse than the NFL. The Giants are giving up 6.5 yards per attempt, which is tied for 16th, so they're in the middle of the pack. Passing touchdowns allowed. Detroit's given up 15, which is tied for 23rd. The Giants have given up 10, which is tied for 7th. So, we see a run defense that's giving up a pretty good chunk of yardage. But what you're seeing with the Giants is a lot of bend but don't break stuff. If we get into the sacks, so the Lions have given up 15 sacks, which is 4th best in the NFL, which is great. The Giants have given up 28, which is 26th in the NFL. And then sacks generated, so the Lions defense has generated 15 sacks, which is tied for 29th. And the Giants have registered 20 total sacks, which is tied for 21st. And then we get into interceptions. Detroit has 6. Obviously, they've picked that up. They have 4 over the last 2 games, which is tied for 12th. The Giants only have 2, which is 31st in the NFL. And then interceptions thrown, the Lions have thrown 7, which is tied for 21st. And the Giants have only thrown 3 total. So, you're looking at a team that's doing a really good job of taking care of the ball. And I think that's a lot of where this is going to go this week. On offense. So, I don't really know what to make of what's happening with DeAndre Swift. It's not really all that big of a deal. I have never thought that he was a super effective between the tackles runner. Obviously, it's easy to see where he is effective. That's in space, catching the ball. But there are also things that you can see. And I'm sure the little bit of frustration that you could see in Deuce Staley in the Hard Knocks episodes, you could see on display last week, especially being in Chicago and seeing some of it. There were opportunities for DeAndre Swift to make big plays a few times. The first snap of the game was a really nice design play, but Goff just couldn't get him the ball. The Bears defense batted the pass down. But then he did catch a screen pass a little bit later in the game, and if he would have just stayed outside, they had it blocked up really nice, and he could have ran for a long ways. But he cut it back inside. It was really weird. I don't know what he was seeing to cut it back inside like the way he did. And it has nothing to do with his toughness or any of that stuff. You're going to hear that he doesn't play through being banged up, and that's true. I think there's an element of truth to that. But some of this is just missing, maybe pressing a little bit and just missing running lanes to run to. So big picture, I just don't know what to make of where he is. I know he's still banged up with the shoulder and the ankle. Jamal Williams is a tough runner, but we're seeing the Lions sort of grind down their offense a touch. So I say that, and I worry this week because of a player like Dexter Lawrence, who's a huge nose tackle, one technique in the middle of the Giants' defensive line, and he's a handful. He is a load. And Frank Ragnow is currently he's either limited in practice or isn't practicing. I think he'll play because they haven't moved Evan Brown to center during practice, and I don't know if that's a tell, but to me that's a bit of a tell that they expect Ragnow to play. But it doesn't matter who's going to play at center. They're going to have their hands full with Dexter Lawrence this week. He is both huge, strong, powerful, stout. He can two-gap, but he's also capable of penetrating and being disruptive too, both against the run and as a pressuring and squeezing against the pass. So the Lions are going to have their hands full, and then when you look at that defensive line, we'll just go offense and then defense this week. So you have Dexter Lawrence in the middle. You have Leonard Williams, who's playing like defensive tackle. You have Jihad Ward playing more 5-tech, like closed defensive end kind of stuff. And then you have Kayvon Thibodeau, who's the rush end. So they're just kind of letting him, just come off the edge. And I know that Aiden Hutchinson and Thibodeau are going to have their careers linked together forever. Hutchinson's been very good. Thibodeau's not. Thibodeau, I know he's not. He has 1 sack. I think he has 1 sack. But he has been productive. He is making plays. He's playing his ass off. He's an effective player. It's just going to take a little time, like it does for all these guys. But this is a really good defensive front. And yes, they're surrendering lots of yards, but when everything gets condensed in the red zone, and there's not a lot of room to play with, the Giants are doing a real good job of stiffening and just beating it back. Sorry. Turning teams back and making them kick field goals. So on offense this week, it sounds like DJ Chark is practicing. It would be great to get him back. I don't expect him to be back just yet, but Josh Reynolds, it sounds as if he's practicing too. And these are important players. The Lions realistically last week got it done with Amon-Ra and a bunch of tight ends catching passes. Not a lot, but like the tight ends have scored a couple weeks in a row. So they've really missed some of their weapons. It would be nice to have Reynolds and Chark back. I expect Reynolds to be back this week with Amon-Ra. So it's almost an all hands on deck situation. If you're going to travel to New York, you have to play a really good game of football. You have to play 60 minutes of football. Sorry. It's a tough test. The Giants are a good football team. They're playing really good football right now. So you need to be playing efficiently, running the ball, and it's the same thing we've talked about, just putting yourself in good situations down and distance-wise. But you also need to make plays throwing the ball too, and capitalizing when you get into the red zone. If you can capitalize and put the ball in the end zone a few times instead of kicking field goals, you really turn things around. So that's kind of where it is. It's I expect Ragnow to play. I would expect the running game to be a little bit suppressed this week because I think the guards are going to have to double. They're going to have to help him with Dexter Lawrence, which means they may not. Things are going to be a little more difficult to run the ball. They might be down a number. When it comes to running the ball, you run to certain places on the field because you have numbers to do it, and theoretically, if Ragnow's capable of blocking Dexter Lawrence 1-on-1, then it leaves one of the guards to get out into space and to give you an extra number, an extra hat in the running game. But I don't know that that's a situation that's going to happen this week. I think they're going to have to help Ragnow. It's not a knock on Ragnow. Lawrence is just a huge dude who can play. So it's a little bit of recognizing that you can't ask Ragnow to just hold up for 60 minutes one-on-one. And then Leonard Williams is still a good player, still a very disruptive player. So on offense, that's kind of where it is that you need to put together a good plan and run the ball effectively. I would suspect we'll see some trickery and some interesting things to get them to the edges of that defensive line, and maybe not so much running between the guards this week. We saw them with a nice, interesting play design to Amon-Ra on a bit of a jet sweep where he didn't take it all the way around the edge. He just he took an inside handoff and folded in. Quick hitting play. I really like the design of that play. So that's kind of where it is on offense. This is gonna be a tough football game. This is big boy football. The game will be decided upon. It's going to get decided based on which team is more efficient, finishing drives, scoring points, and maximizing that. So when you get in the red zone, put the ball into the end zone, score 7 instead of taking field goals. That's kind of where it is on offense. So you want to see Goff in rhythm and tempo. This isn't a situation where he should feel super threatened. But I will tell you, watching the game in the stands last week, there wasn't. He shouldn't have felt threatened multiple times in the game last week, and he did. Some of the happy feet, some of the just unnecessary stuff, and a little panicky at times. I know the Giants have generated a little more sack productivity than the Lions have, but neither of those teams have done it at a high level. So I would think Goff should be able to be a little bit comfortable this week. And again, it's going to come down to which team makes bigger plays and which team scores more when they get into the red zone. I would expect both teams to get there. On defense, Saquon Barkley is back, and if it shouldn't come as a surprise. He's been back all year. And I kind of thought, coming into last season, I thought that he would struggle a little bit just because his cuts, the force that he puts into the ground to make cuts and move, it's violent. And he's big, and he has a huge lower body. And when you have to cut that hard to move, and you're coming off an ACL injury, I just think it's going to take time. And it's turned out that it did take time, that it took him a little longer to recover from that. And I think he would even admit to likely not feeling like himself last year. He looks like the old Saquon Barkley this year. He is very, very dangerous. It's going to be interesting to see how the Lions try to prevent him from running all over them. He's capable of grinding out games, at 4 yards a pop, but he's also capable of busting off big runs too. So, he worries me this week. Daniel Jones worries me as a runner this week. We've seen the Lions defense unable to contain running quarterbacks, whether that's Jalen Hurts or Geno Smith, or last week it's Justin Fields, and this week it's Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones is dangerous as a runner. He's a very athletic football player. So you have a dual threat quarterback who's doing a great job of staying within the designs of his offense. He's thrown for 8 touchdowns. He's only thrown 2 interceptions on the season. He's effective enough as a runner that you have to respect him as a runner. And that's kind of where their offense is. They don't have a lot in the way of receiving help. Darius Slayton has made plays. Kenny Galladay's still there, but he's, I think he needs a guy like Matt Stafford to get him going. Wan'Dale Robinson is a rookie, and he's an interesting player. He's a very short, he's a short guy, short arms, but he's explosive as could be. There's just not a lot in their passing game that makes you worried, with the exception of Daniel Jones extending drives with his feet. And it's not like Justin Fields extending drives where he's going to run for 70 and score. It's more he's going to break contain and get 8 or 10 yards and extend, what was a 3rd and 7 or 8. It's going to be a first down, and that's really hard to recover from if you put an offense into a bad down and distance and then give up a first down like that. So it's demoralizing. On the edges, I think we'll see Andrew Thomas is the second-year player out of Georgia. He looks to be kind of rounding into a pretty good tackle. Evan Neal, I believe, practiced today. I think he'll be back this week. I think. Don't hold me to that. That'll be interesting to see what happens between Evan Neal and the Lions' edge rushers. So, what kind of a day does Aiden Hutchinson have against the Giants? He looked good last week. So, some of what we talked about last week about being disciplined in your rush lanes and not widening and not getting too far up the field applies here as well. Because Jones is sneaky, elusive, and he will make you pay if you give him running lanes. He's done a great job of taking care of the football, which is something that it was a knock since he came into the NFL. He's had some issues, but it's no surprise that they're a really good team running the ball, and they're not turning over the football, and they're winning games, and that's kind of how they're doing it. So. The Lions' defense obviously needs to. You need to see pressure, discipline, some of the same stuff we talked about last week: running to the football, rallying, and then big plays here and there. It would be a great time for the Lions to pressure Jones and force him to make some of these throws that he's made in the past, where you just wonder, what do you see in there? Because that's an easy turnover. He hasn't done that this year, but that's kind of what you hope is that you hope that you can force Daniel Jones into making some bad decisions. But in the end, it's going to be about stopping Saquon Barkley first and foremost, and then everything else sort of plays from there. So they're going to need a good game from Aleem McNeil. You're going to need a really good game from Hutchinson and the other defensive ends. The linebackers are going to have to take really good angles to the ball this week. It'd be nice to have Malcolm Rodriguez back because of the athleticism, just the ability to run. So that's kind of where it is. It's there isn't a scenario that's terrifying like last week with Fields. It's just the general tone of the Giants are able to extend drives either by Saquon Barkley doing his magic stuff or Jones running and just extending drives, and it's so we'll see. We'll see how the Lions what the Lions' approach is there. Again, the Giants don't have a lot in the way of receiving weapons, but that doesn't mean that they're completely incapable of throwing the ball. So Lions are going to have to do a good job in the back end and sort of it's a little bit of the joke earlier about just doing your job. And Barkley might be the primary option for the Giants, but they still have to cover. So, they're going to have to play a complete game, a 60-minute game, summarizing just on offense being more efficient in the red zone and scoring when given those opportunities to scoring touchdowns, and then trying to stop the Giants from getting Barkley going and stop the big plays running the ball, and that's kind of where the matchup is gonna that's how it's gonna get decided this week. So that's this week's preview. Tough game, tough matchup on the road in New York. Could potentially see some weather as a factor here. Again, this is a tough matchup. But it'd be a huge win for the Lions to come out of this game with a win here, and just get things moving in a more positive direction than we've seen in a while. So that's this week's preview. You guys have a great weekend. Let's hope that next week we're talking about another win. See you guys.